In June 2025, the world watched as the long-simmering rivalry between Israel and Iran exploded into open war. This was no proxy conflict. Two regional powers clashed directly, threatening to engulf the Middle East and shake the world. Decades of animosity rooted in opposing ideologies and visions for the region had finally boiled over. Israel, a technological powerhouse, faced off against Iran, a theocracy determined to expand its influence. As missiles lit up the skies over Tehran and Tel Aviv, millions of lives hung in the balance, and the world held its breath. The question echoed globally: how does this end? The 2025 war was the violent eruption of a rivalry fought for decades in the shadows. Iran built an axis of resistance, arming groups like Hezbollah and Hamas to strike Israel indirectly. Israel responded with relentless airstrikes in Syria and covert operations, including assassinations and sabotage of Iran's nuclear program. Cyber attacks, espionage, and proxy battles defined their secret war. By the early 2020s, Israel's campaign had weakened Iran's proxies, forcing Tehran into a corner. The balance shifted. Iran could no longer retaliate indirectly without appearing weak. The stage was set for a direct catastrophic confrontation. The shadow war was about to burst into the open. The final trigger came in Istanbul, June 2025. Dr. Reza Mahmoudi, a top Iranian nuclear scientist, was assassinated in broad daylight. Iran immediately blamed Israel, calling it a brazen act of war. The killing outside Iran's borders was a deliberate humiliation and a clear message: nowhere was safe. Mahmoudi's death, seen as an attack on Iran's nuclear ambitions, left Tehran with no choice but to respond. The assassination drew Turkey, a NATO member, into the crisis, raising the stakes. Hardliners in Tehran demanded direct military retaliation. The decades-long rivalry had crossed the point of no return. The fuse was lit for open war. The world braced for what would come next. On June 12, 2025, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a massive preemptive strike on Iran. F-35S, bombers and drones targeted Iran's nuclear sites at Natanz and Fordow, military bases and command centers. The operation aimed to cripple Iran's nuclear program and decapitate its military leadership. Mossad operatives on the ground guided missiles and sabotaged air defenses, enabling deep penetration. Prime Minister Netanyahu declared the attack essential to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. Iran was caught off guard, key facilities were destroyed, and top leaders killed. The world saw the shadow war end in a flash of overwhelming force. But the attack guaranteed a massive Iranian response. The conflict had only just begun. Iran struck back within 24 hours, launching Operation True Promise. Over 150 ballistic missiles and 100 kamikaze drones targeted Israeli cities and military sites. Air raid sirens sent millions scrambling for shelter as Israel's Iron Dome and U.S. forces intercepted many threats. Some missiles broke through, striking Tel Aviv and causing casualties and destruction. The psychological impact was immense. Israel was not invulnerable. Iran also targeted U.S. bases in Iraq and Syria, while its allies, like the Houthis, joined the fight. Jordan shot down Iranian drones crossing its airspace. The conflict was no longer bilateral. It threatened to ignite the entire region. The Middle East was on the brink of a wider war. The world watched as escalation seemed inevitable. The war sent shockwaves worldwide. The UN Security Council convened an emergency session, but divisions paralyzed action. The U.S. backed Israel's right to self-defense, while Russia and China condemned the strikes. Oil prices surged, with Brent crude jumping over 7%, fueling fears of global inflation. Stock markets tumbled, and investors rushed to safe havens like gold. Defense stocks soared, travel and airline shares plummeted. The economic fallout rippled far beyond the battlefield. The world economy braced for more turmoil as the conflict raged on. Looming over every strike was the specter of nuclear escalation. Israel's attack on Iran's nuclear sites, meant to prevent a bomb, risked pushing Tehran to pursue one at any cost. The IAEA warned of catastrophic risks if nuclear facilities became targets. Experts feared Iran might withdraw from the Non-Proliferation Treaty and launch a secret weapons program. A nuclear arms race in the Middle East seemed possible, with Saudi Arabia and Turkey likely to follow. The stakes had never been higher. The world was one miscalculation away from disaster. Ordinary people in Israel and Iran bore the brunt of war. In Israel, daily life vanished under the constant threat of missiles. Families huddled in shelters, cities fell silent, and fear was everywhere. The attack on Ramat Gan symbolized the war's indiscriminate toll. In Iran, Israeli strikes brought devastation to cities already suffering under sanctions. Panic buying, shortages, and fear of contamination gripped the population. Both nations' civilians were trapped by decisions made far above them. The war's true victims were not soldiers or leaders, but the millions caught in the crossfire. Their suffering was the real cost of this conflict. By June 14, 2025, the Middle East stood at a crossroads. A tense pause had settled, but peace was far from certain. Both sides faced domestic pressure to appear strong, making de-escalation difficult. Diplomacy worked behind the scenes, but public rhetoric remained fiery. Without a real breakthrough, any ceasefire would be fragile, a pause to rearm. The alternative, a wider, more devastating war, possibly drawing in Hezbollah and other powers. The future of the region and the world hung in the balance. Would leaders choose restraint, or would pride and revenge lead to catastrophe? The world waited, hoping for peace, fearing the worst.